My dudes, this is Math Time with Mr. G, and today we're going to study for our end of the year final. The whole point of this video is for you to remind yourself, oh yeah, we did learn a lot, and I remember how to do this, but maybe not that. And so then the idea is that whatever didn't trigger your memory, go back to the channel and find the video that matched that and rewatch that video to help you study. So in topic 1, we worked with things where there was variables on both sides, and we had to solve to find out what x was. Literal equations was when it was only letters, and we had to solve for one of the letters. Solving for inequalities is when we had a number line, and we had x and then numbered, and then we had to do either an open or closed dot, and then shade. And then compound inequalities was when we had a number on either side of our equation. We had to solve and then when we divided by a negative, our sign flipped, and then we would have graphed open circle, closed circle kind of idea, and color within. Topic 2, we had our slope equation, our slope-intercept equation, and this helped us graph because we knew the y-intercept, and then we could move always to the right. Point slope is when they only gave us one point and the slope, and we could plug in, and then we could distribute and then add y1 over to get into y equals mx plus b form. Standard looked like this, and this was useful if they gave it to us like this. We would cover up x and we could solve for y, and we could say the y-intercept was at 0, 2, and the x-intercept is when we covered up y and we solved for x, and then we could graph at 2, 6, and then draw a line. Parallel meant that they had the same slope. Perpendicular meant it was flip the fraction, flip the sign. Topic 3, we said it's a function if there were no repeats in x, or if we drew a line down it only crossed once. If it crossed multiple times, this was not a function. Function notation is where they gave us the x in a secret way, and we just had to plug in x and then solve. Our arithmetic sequence was when we knew the pattern, and then minus our first term plus whatever the first term was. So for example, if we had 2, 5, 8, the pattern is plus 3, and the first term was 2. Scatter plots is when we were comparing two pieces of data, so like shoe size and height, and we interviewed a bunch of people and we put X's on it. The line of best fit was the line that went through it, and then this line could help us predict the future. Systems were all about us seeing where the lines cross. So graphing is you literally just graph and say where do they cross. Substitution is when we got one of the equations all by itself, and then we changed x to what we found in the other equation, and then we solved. Elimination is when we had then line up x, y number, and then we added up the columns, and this canceled, and then we solved from there. Graphing with inequalities was when there was a y portion, an mx, and a b, and then we graphed like normal, and then it was either dashed or solid line, and then greater or above told us where to shade. Systems is when we did this twice, and we asked where did we shade both times. Solving for absolute value. Is where we got everything on the absolute value to one side of the equal sign. And if it equaled a negative number, that meant no solution. However, let's pretend it equaled a positive. We would rewrite the inside exactly how we see it, and then go +1, -1, and then solve. Graphing absolute value. This was my rate of change. Inside the absolute value is opposite of what we think, and then outside is what we think. So this would mean left 2, down 1, and then up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, and it makes a V shape for an absolute value. And the last one for this is piecewise. So piecewise was when they said f of x is 1/2 x plus 3 when x is greater than 4. So that's where we graphed like normal. So 1, 2, 3, up 1 over 2, and we graphed, and then it said go to where x is 4, go up to our graph, open circle, and it says everything greater than 4 we want. So everything less than 4 goes away. So it was me erasing this and saying this is all that matters, is that tiny part of the graph. Exponent rules. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Anything to a negative power needs to move to turn positive. Power to a power, multiply, okay? And then multiplication meant add, and division meant subtract. Log functions was bay. So that meant if I had 4x to the 64, that means log of my base over log of my answer equaled my exponent. Growth and decay was our a times b to x minus 1. Growth was when b was bigger than 1. Decay was when it was less than 1. And then we could do our geometric functions using this as our equation. And then compound interest was our final amount, was our principal times 100% plus the rate divided by number of times a year to the power of number times a year times how many years. Naming and classifying, so that was our monomial, binomial, trinomial, polynomial, and then to the first degree and second degree. Adding and subtracting of polynomials, we can only do that if they match in exponent. So we would want it to write in standard form, so biggest exponent first, add the coefficients like that. Multiplying or double distribute was where we multiplied the first term to every term in the second parentheses, and then the second term to everything in the parentheses, and then combining like terms. And then factoring was our complete opposite, where we had A times C plus B. And then our special cases were when we had x minus 3 squared. That means write what you see twice. Our parabola vocabulary. So this opens up with a vertex that's a minimum, and then we had a rate of change. Vertex form was when they gave us a rate, and then squared told us it was a parabola, and then h and k are, h is opposite of what we think for our vertex. This is what we think for our vertex. And then standard form was ax squared plus bx plus c. And to find the vertex using this, we would do x is equal to negative b over 2a and plug it back in to find y. Okay. Our word problem was where we had negative 16 t squared plus v sub 0 t plus h sub 0. So this was the initial height that we threw the football. This was the velocity I left our hand, and t represents time, and always negative 16 because that represents gravity. And then system of equations is where we would have an equation like this. We would set them equal to each other, and then we would solve for 0, and then after we solve for 0, we could put into our quadratic formula. Topic 9, finding key features. So key features on a table. Okay. Our y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. Our vertex is when the pattern stops and then starts repeating again. So this happens to be our vertex as well. Solving using radicals means that we divide and then square root. But with the square root, we have to remember there's a positive answer and a negative answer. Solve by factoring is we could factor and then set equal to 0, and then set each one of these equal to 0, and then solve for x. Quadratic formula is our x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And our discriminant is just this portion right here. And then if we got a positive answer, that meant 2 solutions. Exactly 0, 1 solution, and then negative means no solutions. Analyzing a data set. So sometimes using the mean, the average of everyone is important. Sometimes median is the most middle person, so we can get rid of rich, famous people so they don't ruin our data. Comparing is comparing the middle of both and saying which one's greater and why. Then we had data set shapes. So it was either skewed or normal, and it could be skewed in each direction, and it talked about where's the empty space. Our standard deviation says here's the middle. If you are 1 tick mark away, you are 68% of the population. If you are 2 tick marks away, you are 97. And if you were 3 tick marks away, you represented 99. So if you were way out here, you were what we called a nominee. Two-way tables means we're going to compare boys and girls and their favorite food of pizza or cheeseburgers. And so if 10 boys like pizza, 20 boys like cheeseburgers, there was 30 boys interviewed. Or 5 girls liked pizza and 40 girls liked cheeseburgers, 45 girls were interviewed. And that means that 15 people liked pizza, 60 people liked cheeseburgers, for a total of 75 people who were interviewed. I know that was long, but thank you. Be kind to one another, ask lots of questions, and think deeply.